need a shave. Genius comic tuber Matt Draper assembled a group of amazing video essays to talk about one horrifying moment they found in any piece of media. The playlist of videos is up now and they're amazing. Some of these videos are made by some of my favorite video creators on the platform. Now, I wasn't invited to the original batch of uploads because, look at me. But still, I wanted to try my hand at this whole ordeal because I'm not the biggest horror buff, but there is one specific moment that will really kind of haunt me for the rest of my life. So without further ado, I present to you Fall tends to be an important season for those who get to experience it. For some, it's the beautiful trees fading from green to orange, from branches to piles. For others, it's the pumpkin spice, the apple orchards, the changing weather, and the one left glove that got away. And for the lucky ones, it's about family, sending the kids out to have fun dressed up as their idols, finally getting together with the cousins to figure out how to fit that turkey in the oven, collecting coupons and getting the best sale on Christmas gifts for their kids. For me, however, especially recently, fall tends to be about nostalgia. Waking up to see the frozen dew in the backyard, having a bowl of honey bunches of oats, slipping on some new boots, taking out a sleek black jacket, and stepping out onto the grass, taking in that fresh, cool breeze. It was a simpler time when stress wasn't as big of a thing to worry about, when I had time to spare, like that leaf on the ground, detached from those above, but ready for a good time. But fall was never complete without one thing. I could have all the candy, all the Thanksgiving food, all the new Legos, all the time in the world to jump into every leaf pile on my block, but no, it wasn't fall unless I had one final thing. On the Christmas of 2011, my parents gave me the first two books released in the Heroes of Olympus series, The Lost Hero and The Son of Neptune. I shouldn't have, but I actually read the second book, Son of Neptune, first. Let's just say I didn't really follow that whole don't judge a book by its cover principle at that age. I didn't know half of what I read, but I knew it was something special that I had never experienced before. By the time February came around, I was done with both books, and by June I was done with the entire early Percy Jackson series. I had fallen in love with this universe of characters more so than I ever had before. Batman, Spider-Man? No, Percy, Annabeth, Leo, Nico, Frank, these were the fictional beings now living rent-free inside my head. It was the summer of 2012. I didn't have homework to worry about or school projects to chase, but there was one thing I couldn't stop fantasizing. One thing I couldn't stop daydreaming about. Coming fall 2012. The Heroes of Olympus, Book 3, The Mark of Athena. I spent months theorizing and Charlie Dang over that one text bubble. What was the Mark of Athena? Were Percy and Jason gonna fight? How were the Romans gonna react to the Greeks showing up in a friendly ballistic warship? If I wasn't busy rewatching clips from the Avengers, I was pacing around my room, sketching in notebooks, scouring the internet. My eyes were set on a goal, October 2nd, the day of reckoning, and I wasn't letting anything get in my way. I played the good kid with my parents, making sure I didn't in any way jeopardize my chances of getting this thing on release. But sadly, I couldn't get this thing exactly on the 2nd. Shipping said it would only come a couple days later. I never really cared too much about spoilers, but this was a big exception. I blocked myself off of the internet and just sat still in anticipation. The book arrived on the 5th. I finished it within the weekend. No amount of obsession could have prepared me for what I had just experienced. Can we talk about cliffhangers for a second? Cliffhangers in literal media have existed for millennia. Literally. Every story in the Arabian 1001 Nights ended with a cliffhanger so the narrator could save herself from execution, living another day to tell the tall tales. Funnily enough, some shows, even to this day, seem to work on a very similar path of success. Titans. But what actually makes a good cliffhanger for a story? Some say that cliffhangers are usually a cheap tactic to get the big press bucks, that real good stories are able to hint at a twist from the very beginning. Others say that cliffhangers are one of the best way to generate a strong emotional reaction from an audience, and they can be surgically used to enhance the ending of an arc. Can these endings succeed with the proper execution of a shock factor, or do they need to be planned from the very beginning of the story? I think what makes for the best cliffhangers is less about the hanging from the edge process and more about coming and meeting the end of the existing cliff, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I personally prefer cliffhangers where the core narrative beats and arcs being conveyed primarily come to an end before a twist seamlessly leads us into the next process of the story, like with Empire Strikes Back. The movie ends with the cliffhanger revelation, but the story the movie told has ended. Luke's worldview has changed, Leia has admitted to her feelings, Han's made the sacrifice play, and Anakin's revealed the truth to his son. We want more, we want to see how it ends, but again, the story the movie told has come full circle. Same thing with Infinity War. At the end of the day, this grandiose event was a tale of our hero's failure through and through, and the story of that failure has come full circle. Same thing, we want more, we so badly want some more, but at least for me, there is this strangely satisfying sense of finalmente by the end of the film. But none of my appreciation for this craftsmanship behind the cleverest of cliffhangers would be possible if it didn't start from this singular moment. The moment I finished reading that scene for the first time, none of it would be the same to me without the Mark of Athena cliffhanger. So before I actually go about describing the scene, I should probably give some context since some of you probably haven't read The Mark of Athena before, so spoiler warning just in case you ever planned on reading the series. This book is part of an ongoing series, the third of its sequel series by Rick Riordan, that adapts aspects of old Greek and Roman culture to a more modernized setting. It started with the Percy Jackson books, a first-person lens into the story of the demigod son of a normal woman from New York and the god of the sea. He defeats the Titan Kronos with his friends and finds true love with Annabeth Chase. The sequel series raised the stakes. We got to explore the flip side to the Greek demigods, the Romans. The Lost Hero, the first book, told the tale of Jason, a Roman demigod, discovering the Greek camp, while The Son of Neptune, the second book, had Percy discover the Roman camp, forming alliances and getting ready for a fight with the Earth goddess Gaia. The Mark of Athena can be considered the Infinity War event of sorts for this saga. Worlds collide as these two hemispheres of mythology confront each other, forming a combined team to take down these monsters once and for all in their original birthplace, Rome. The book ends with a final confrontation at the Pit of Tartarus, the gateway to absolute hell and chaos. After defeating the Spider Queen Arachne and saving the Athena Parthenon, Annabeth slips and falls into the pit, but her friends come and save her. Percy grabs her hand in the nick of time, but he's hanging on the edge with the last of his grip. The group tries to save them as the pull towards the depths of Tartarus gets stronger by the second. And that's how we arrive at this one scene. See, I wish I could show you the scene with all of its visual glory, but it's not a movie, it's a book, it's a single page, so instead I want to do something a little bit different. I'm going to read it aloud and attempt to have you guys enjoy it with me. Welcome to Book Caffeine. My name is Mr. Caffeine, but please, call me Book. This joke was terrible. What I'm going to do now is read the following scene from The Mark of Athena, starting with page 567 if you're following along. And yeah, let's see how this goes. Annabeth's leg felt like it was pulling free of her body. Pain washed everything in red. The force of the underworld tugged at her like dark gravity. She didn't have the strength to fight. She knew she was too far down to be saved. "Percy, let me go," she croaked. "You can't pull me up." His face was white with effort. She could see in his eyes that he knew it was hopeless. "Never," he said. He looked up at Nico, 15 feet above. "The other side, Nico! We'll see you there! Understand?" Nico's eyes widened. "But lead them there," Percy shouted. "Promise me!" I will." Below them, the voice laughed in the darkness. "Sacrifices, beautiful sacrifices to wake the goddess." Percy tightened his grip on Annabeth's wrist. His face was gaunt, scraped and bloody, his hair dusted with cobwebs. But when he locked eyes with her, she thought she had never seen him look more handsome. "We're staying together," he promised. "You're not getting away from me. Never again." Only then did she understand what would happen. A one-way trip. A very hard fall. As long as we're together, she said. She heard Nico and Hazel still screaming for help. She saw the sunlight far, far above. Maybe the last sunlight she would ever see. Then Percy let go of his tiny ledge, and together, holding hands, he and Annabeth fell into the endless darkness. Yeah. The Mark of Athena accomplished many things in its 586 pages. However, to me, the most important thing it did was come full circle in establishing the relationship between Percy and Annabeth. By the end of The Last Olympian, we got a touching underwater kiss scene, and we look forward to seeing more from this newly blossoming couple. However, author Rick Riordan knows what we want, and instead he gives us a sucker punch to our hearts. We learn that Percy has disappeared from their lives, nowhere to be found, secretly on the other side of the country. No, we don't get to see this couple together, trying to live their lives and make things work. Instead, they've been broken up again, and we're left salivating, waiting for them to reunite. But then Riordan finally says, let them eat cake. Our heroes find each other again in a scene that's kinda cringe, but still very touching. As opposed to some of the other couples in the past and present, they're still together and they rebuild that chemistry with ease. This book offers a much needed look into the realistic dynamic behind the power couple everyone was too busy shipping for the past 5 years. Of the entire team of 7, these two are the characters we're most familiar with. So naturally, that barn door scene and the pizza date scene are 2 of my favorite scenes in this whole franchise, but not just because we get to see that dynamic. It's also because those are the scenes in which we really get to sink our teats into their reactions to this whole ordeal and what it's done to their relationship. They may be the perfect couple and, they really seem to argue on a large level, but that doesn't mean they don't have different outlooks, perspectives, and concerns for their futures. There may not be a single central character for this whole sequel series, but Percabeth takes center stage in the emotional department, at least for this book and the next. And rightfully so. The focus of anticipation when the sequel series was being released was, what's Annabeth and Percy like, or what happened to Percabeth? There was probably a lot of stress on Riordan's tab to continue honoring these characters' stories, but he did it better than anyone else could. Percy and Annabeth feel like Percy and Annabeth. They work well together, they love each other, and they would go through anything with each other. I mean, we have 7 books developing the relationship, so that helps. So what does this have to do with the cliffhanger? When this book came out, the reactions were pretty crazy to say the least. Sure, Riordan had done cliffhangers before, but not to this level. The ending subverted the readers in a way that you couldn't see coming, but in retrospect, totally makes sense with foreshadowing and character arcs. But nonetheless, it's a subversion of expectations, and you know how the internet reacts to that shit? Tumblr threads, Reddit reviews, left and right, crying video responses, you name it. I mean, in the end, it's really kind of a massive compliment to Riordan's work, who took the whole thing like a champ, still trolling fans about it all to this day.
I can't believe they let me get away with that, but they did.
I think the only thing that's really comparable to the reaction from this book would be the ending to Infinity War. Sure, people knew Spider-Man would come back, they just had to check Tom Holland's Instagram page for some Far From Home set pics, and similarly, people knew that Percy and Annabeth wouldn't definitively die. They were the characters this whole series was banking on now. No, the emotional response came from our newfound and strengthened relationship with these characters. Like Spider-Man and Black Panther and the Guardians, we watch these characters we've grown to love finally start achieving their goals and becoming who they want to be. Percy's come to terms with who he is as a hero and has grown over his fear of drowning. Annabeth's embraced her destiny and restored the mark of her mother. But most importantly, their relationship has become stronger than it's ever been before. They're ready to take on the world together. And then after all that, they fall into the ultimate pit of despair and darkness. It's a tale as old as time. There's no happy ending for the heroes, but here it doesn't feel like that same cliche again. I think it makes sense this time. We've grown with our characters and now we fall with them too. In a way, the price for that valuable and touching reunion scene at the beginning of the book was this one traumatizing event. Some will say the cliffhanger on its own is a mark of brilliant storytelling, and that's kinda true, but to me it's nothing without the 500-something pages before that help re-establish these characters as lovers, as heroes, and as the emotional powerhouses that mean so much to us. That mean so much to me. A According to Oxford, a critic is someone who professionally judges the technical merits of a literary, artistic, or musical work. It's a technical practice, one that requires that there be no bias or influence in their comments and assessments. I couldn't be a critic of this book even if I wanted to. See, you can barely ever find me making an objective analysis or critique of any art piece, not because I think it's wrong or something, but because I literally can't. I'm terrible at it. I can't last 60 seconds in a film debate because all my points just end up boiling down to, I just liked it, leave me alone. It's pathetic. I let my emotional and nostalgic connections rule my opinions, and my dumbass pea brain is set up in a way where when I find the semblance of something I like in a piece of media, I latch onto it like it's my last chance at true love. But over this past year or so, especially with this channel, I've tried to be a bit more optimistic about that side of myself. I've revisited these moments from my past, whether it be running out of the theater when the Joker blew up that hospital, secretly checking the Zombies episode of The Batman late at night on my iPad, putting that Civil War trailer on loop for 2 hours straight, the first time I cried at a film with Jojo Rabbit. These moments from my life define and influence my opinions on media. They help shape my own perspectives on what I consider meaningful art. But no moment, and I mean no moment, comes close to having as big of a cultural impact on me than on that night, October 7th of 2012, when I shut the cover of that book for the first time, feeling the shock through my bones as I stared at the barren wall in front of me. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, a trauma that overcame every fiber of my being. It was horrifying. But it wasn't just the simplicity of the moment. I wasn't reading a Stephen King book or an Edgar Allan poem that sent shivers down my spine. No, this was the third book in a young adult fantasy series. No, instead, it was this overwhelming feeling of completion that caused me to hear my own heartbeat, a parasitic question that terrified my mind. What now? I'd been anticipating this book for nearly a year, and after all of that, I was left with this even more intensified sense of anticipation. It was something I didn't want, and honestly, it was kind of unsatisfying. But I think that's the point. The only thing I could think about for the next month was the Mark of Athena. I reread the book at least 6 times that year, discovering new aspects I enjoyed every single read-through. I went through Tumblr threads, I read discussions on Twitter, I found blog posts going into detail with their theories and predictions for the next year. I needed more content, so I searched everywhere for it. I expanded my horizons and watched more shows, checked out new movies, and read more books than I ever had before, just seeking that same heart-twisting feeling I got from reading Riordan's novels. And none of this would have happened to me if not for that one scene, that one page, that one horrifying moment that set me on this journey to emotionally invest myself in new forms of art. Nowadays, I don't really read as often as I used to. To be honest, I believe I've just lost a lot of interest in the medium as a whole, and it's kind of sad. But every time it's that time of year again, when the leaves start falling, the frosted dew shows up in the early morning, and I wear my black jacket again, I get that book out and I spend every bit of free time I get running through it again. I'm teleported back to that weekend, sitting on the bed with a cup of cocoa to my left, flipping through the pages, mini story after another, perspective after perspective. And then I get to that last page, as Percy and Annabeth fall into darkness, and somehow I can't stop myself from smiling, recalling how I felt all those years ago, now knowing how it all ends. Art isn't just ingestible entertainment. It can change you, open your eyes to new perspectives. It doesn't matter how critically acclaimed it is or how many of your friends like it. It's about you and your connection to the art, whether that be from nostalgia, an intense emotional reaction, or just an undefined sense of love. The right art can stick with you as something you cherish forever. And at the end of the day, I think that's the most important lesson I learned from the Mark of Athena. How one horrifying moment can become a lifelong cherished memory.
I gotta go. I know, I know, I know.
Say no to drugs.